make sure you truly know what you're investing in, especially when it comes to your health. Because when you vote with your wallet, when you vote with your time, when you vote with your energy, when you vote with your attention, it only continues to grow the influence of that individual. And oftentimes, if they are not in it for the right reason, it is giving somebody a platform that not only is not in it for the right reason, but ultimately can start hurting people in the long run.
This is the Own It Show, where we tell stories of how everyday people made ownership theirs.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Own It Show. I'm your host, Justin Rothling-Schofer. And if you guys are new here, I really encourage you to go take a look back at the bunch of recorded videos and that are on YouTube, but also the other recorded podcasts that are here in the archives. It's been really exciting over the last 6 months. We've been averaging close to 20,000 downloads a month with it. Just crazy. I was telling this story yesterday, actually, where the first 18 months of this podcast, I was getting 17, 18, 19 downloads a month. And I'm sure that my mother consisted of 10 to 15 of those. And so it was just the consistency of continuing to show up, continuing to put out really positive and different content, I think, that continued to kind of see a escalation in kind of where we were going. And so there's a lot of great content in the archives that you can go and listen to and watch on YouTube. We're going on close to episode 210, which is really kind of cool and neat to look at. But if this podcast does something for you, if it provides some value, if it really creates a change in how you think, how you feel, how you look, and how you just approach life, I really encourage you to A, share it with somebody, B, leave a review, and C, give it some type of rating. That's the only way that we're really able to reach more people and get what we're ultimately wanting to do with it, which is redeem the health of the world and really make sure that the truth comes out when it comes to health and wellness, because your health and wellness is the true factor of wealth at the end of the day. We've all got a million goals, but without our health, we really only have one. And so that leads me into what I want to talk about today, and really talking about truth. And what does truth mean? What is the purpose of truth? What is the intention of truth when it comes to your health? What is the purpose of truth in those that you're allowing to speak into your life? Who are you following? Who are you listening to? Who are you taking influence from? And when it comes to coaches, when it comes to mentors, when it comes to influencers, what are you expecting from them? What's the filter that you put them through to kind of say, hey, yeah, this is somebody that I want to listen to. And I'm going to tell a little story here, because this is what really caused me to want to do this show, caused me to want to talk about this. And I'm going to leave the names out for the concept of starting a war and just speaking ill. But I want to, when there's something that needs to be spoken in truth, it's just really heavily on my heart. And so over the last 2 years, there's been a specific human kinesiologist or biohacker, if you will, that's come onto the scene and been really prevalent due to the amount of marketing and storytelling that's kind of gone on. And what this individual's company really is focused around, and what he's this big spokesperson for, is DNA testing and blood testing. And when you really start to look at what they do these testings and then provide some level of supplementation. And forever, all the content's been focused on healthy lifestyles, changing the habits around what you're doing, getting rid of seed oils, all of these things that, quite frankly, are good for you. They're positive. There's nothing outside or outrageous about what has been discussed. Now, some of the studies that have been cited, some of the processes, some of the way that they're testing and the way that they're formulating and just white labeling supplements, it's not what I find in integrity. And I've always just sensed some level of distrust there. But yesterday, I found out that this same individual was actually deeply out of integrity, and that they have major investments with companies that are producing snack products that have seed oils, have hydrogen oils, have processed sugars, and have things like erythritol, all of these compounds in the food that they continue to try to say in the health company you should be eliminating from your diet. But because there's a major upside financially, there's now investment backing and just very out of alignment, out of integrity, out of character for what it is that's going on. So playing both ends of the spectrum. And that's where I really come back to this, is understanding, okay, what is the heart of somebody who you're listening to? What is the heart posture? What is the intention? What is the purpose? What is the meaning for somebody who's speaking into your life? And to really start asking questions. And to do that, I always come back to Romans 12, 1-2. And the reason I use that as almost like a verse for my life is when you think about the concept of and I'm going to read it straight off so I don't butcher it. But when you think about what Romans 12, 1-2 talks about, it really talks about how you live. And it's not just about how you do one thing, but it's how you do everything. And that really starts to matter. And it says, therefore, brothers and sisters, I urge you in the view of God's mercy to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. And so when I say this is your true and proper worship, it's not about what you do when you're on stage. It's not about what do you do when you're on the podcast. It's not about what do you do when you're writing your book. It's not what do you do about when you're starting a company. It's not what do you do when you are living when you're at home with your family. It's not what do you do when you're at the office. It's what do you do in your entire life, in your life holistically, in every single thing that you do. Because you can't just judge somebody on a single moment. You have to judge them on what they do all the time. You have to create a decision as to whether you're going to take the information they're saying as truth or whether there is an ulterior motive to that. And it's then do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that's when you will be able to test and approve what God's perfect and pleasing will is for you. And so at that moment, when you think about this, you have to start questioning what are people's motives? There's a couple podcasts that and a couple people in the health space that I've met them, I've hung out with them, I've seen them. They live it. They are consistent. They are continually learning. They have coaches. And that's, I think, something that we have to come back to, and we have to start giving ourselves parameters as to what it is that we're doing, why are we doing it, and how do we ultimately show up. And so when you think about who you're following, when you think about who you're letting speak into your life, when you're thinking about who it is you're letting influence the decisions you're making, when you think about whose business you're sowing into, because if you're engaging in somebody's business, you are engaging and ultimately sowing into them. We have to realize that this isn't something that, it's just a transaction. No, you are sowing into their business. You're sowing into their mission. You're sowing into their continued influence in other people. And so I want you to go through this framework with me. I want you to start to put this in place when you start to think about what podcasts are you listening to? Who are you what books are you reading? Who are you hanging around? Who are you taking influence from? And something to kind of really dive in on this with. So number one is, what value system are they operating from? What operating system do they have, and what values are they based in? Can you see from their social media posts? Can you see from other people that know them? Can you see from what they do consistently? What values do they have? What actions have they taken that have produced certain things? It's not about what they say. It's not about me saying, hey, I value kindness and authenticity and honesty, but yet all of a sudden the way I act is not always kind. The way I act is not always authentic. The way I act is not always honest. It's how are you acting, not what are you saying? And what do your actions say about your values? So number one, making sure you have heavily aligned values with the person that you're letting speak into your life, with that coach that you're letting speak into your life. Number two, making sure that they have been and overcome where you are wanting to go. And what do I mean by that? I mean that they've ultimately helped people get to, or taken themselves to the place that you want to go after having been exactly where you are or in some similar place. So I say this in the sense that if somebody is speaking into your life from a health standpoint, but yet they've never actually taken themselves out of a place of dysfunction and a place of illness into a place of true health, or taking them from a super stressed state to a super healthy state. Even if they've had coaches speak into their life, even if they've had people speak into their life, even if they've had a system that's helped get them there, if they haven't been able to A, get the education, B, be around this type of environment and you could go back to the outliers and the 10,000 rule. If they haven't put the 10,000 hours in, if they haven't done these things, if they haven't been in the places and overcome and gotten to the places that you want to go, highly question as to why you would want to listen to them, why you would want to be in their shoes, why you would want to take influence from them. There's so many people out there that have themselves been healed, but it was somebody else that ultimately helped them to do this. And now all of a sudden call themselves an expert and just are regurgitating the same information. It's about being willing and being able to shift with the times. Pete Vargas said this to me the other day when he was talking about marketing, and it was so brilliant. He said, a lot of times what happens with them in the marketing space is people have found what works, and you set it and you forget it. You go and you say, hey, here's what works. Go set your ad spend, go and set your marketing piece, and just let it go and let it run. And they wonder why it doesn't work, because what happens is you need to be able to treat each situation differently. You need to be able to make decisions on the fly. You need to be able to see the outputs of what's actually happening and create new inputs. And that's no different than our health. And what happens when people only know one system, when people only know one thing, everything looks like a nail because all they have is a hammer. And so they have to be able to truly understand it, not just understand a system, but understand health, understand the body. And the only way to do that is if they've been and overcome and have ultimately gotten to where you want to go. They've seen it. They've been around it. They're a true expert in this space and have been able to implement this really, really powerfully. Number 3, you have to trust them. And I cannot tell you how important this is. The word trust, I think, is often overlooked when it comes to especially social media relationships, podcast relationships, book relationships, knowledge relationships, conference relationships, influencer relationships. I think we often forget the word trust. Because when you have somebody who you don't know, you have never met them, you've never seen them in person, it's all been through the content they put out, you start to feel like you know them. You start to feel like you can trust them. But it comes back to that values comment that we started with, that number 1. And it's how are they living? What is actually going on behind the scenes? You have no idea. You really have no idea. And so you really can't trust somebody, which is why, and I've had I would say the pleasure, but also the displeasure of meeting some influencers who I was just like, man, you are amazing. I love your content. I love everything you talk about. I love what you put out. But then meeting them in person was super disappointing. And they really didn't meet the same expectations or meet the same persona. They were just playing a character on social. They were playing a character on content. They were playing a character in everything that they were doing. But yet, we're a completely different person when you actually meet them in person. And so I really encourage you to do investigative work on how do you trust somebody? Can you truly trust somebody? Do they live everything out? Do they live the same front of stage as they do back of stage? Do they live by what they're talking about, or do they live in a different way? Another person that I got access to, they have a massive wellness facility. And they push a full raw vegan diet and saying that you should be able to implement this at your once you go home. You should be able to implement this in your life day to day after you leave the ranch. But everybody on the executive team, the CEO themselves, none of them follow a raw vegan diet. But yet that's what they're preaching. That's what they're telling everybody. And that's what they're saying everybody has to do. And so that's like that asynchronistic, that out of alignment, out of integrity, lack of character, lack of trust, lack of values that just really doesn't sit well with me. If you don't do it and you're claiming that that's how you live and that's how everybody has to do things, but yet you don't live in accordance to that. How does that make me trust you with anything else that's going on? And then lastly, and this is quite frankly one of the most important things I think to me that builds on top of everything that we've just talked about, is that they're continually learning. They're continually evolving. They've got a coach themselves. They've got influencers and a team around them themselves that's continually teaching them. Because any industry is constantly moving. Any industry is constantly shifting. Any industry is constantly having new research come on board, and you have to continue to learn. You have to continue to evolve. I look back at things that I said in 2012, 2013, 2015, 2016, and I've changed my thought process on them. Have I completely shifted my stance on anything and shifted my philosophies? No, but I've certainly shifted my outlook on things and my reasoning behind things. You look back at 2013 to, I even say 2018, I was a purist when it came to heart rate monitoring and heart rate variability and the data. That if you were not wearing a heart rate monitor with an actual strap around your chest, that the data didn't matter, that if you weren't gathering HRV by laying down on a bed for 10 minutes, first thing when you woke up in the morning, and getting the raw data, and that's how you were getting your HRV analysis, that it really wasn't as accurate and couldn't be tracked as if you were doing it passively. And I completely changed my thought process on that. One, the technology's gotten far better. But the second thing is, like, let's make sure it's sustainable. Let's make sure it's doable. Not everybody wants to lay down and has that time to be consistent and really be able to do it like I was during that time. And so that's these concepts where I've shifted because I've constantly learned, and I've constantly had people speaking into my life, and I've had people who have ultimately had aligned values that I trusted, that have ultimately built what I'm wanting to build, or have done something similar that I'm wanting to do. And they're also learning from coaches. They're also learning from people. They're also going in that direction. And so that's what I encourage you to put through this filter is, do your values match their values? Are they the same front of stage as they are back of stage? Do you trust them implicitly? Have they been, or have they overcome and gotten to where you are wanting to go? And number 4, are they being coached? Are they continually learning? Are they continually leaning into these things? And as you start to see somebody, realize that they're just a person, realize that they have flaws, realize that they are not perfect. But in doing so, in understanding that, in realizing that, make sure, and I say this really heavily, make sure you know what their character's like. Make sure you know what they're involved in. Make sure you know what's happening behind the scenes. Make sure you truly know what you're investing in, especially when it comes to your health. Because when you vote with your wallet, when you vote with your time, when you vote with your energy, when you vote with your attention, it only continues to grow the influence of that individual. And oftentimes, if they are not in it for the right reason, it is giving somebody a platform that not only is not in it for the right reason, but ultimately can start hurting people in the long run. And so that's what I wanted to come back to you guys with today. It was something that was heavy on my heart, something that I just felt everybody needed to hear. And we live in this world where everybody has a microphone. Everybody that has a computer, that has a phone, all of a sudden has a stage. And if we as consumers, as we as people taking a look at it, are not intentional and critical with how we show up and how we think about it, we can be burned in the long run. So with that, guys, realize that you have the power to change. You have the power to choose. You have the power to make a decision. But we want to make sure that we really focus and have a system and a process as to who we listen to. Make sure the values are aligned. Make sure you trust them. Make sure that you've taken a look and seen that the people that you're looking to have overcome or have gotten to where you want to go, and make sure they're continually learning, because we know success is different. So own your different. I'll see you guys next week.